Let's get into the first story. We got this link from Project Veritas. Fox 26 Houston TV reporter Ivory Hecker goes public. I don't need to read it. Ivory's sitting right here. So let's just start from the beginning. What happened?
Well, weird stuff started to happen late last summer. The first thing that just really stunned me was when Fox 26 sent me to cover COVID treatment at a hospital. They didn't like what the doctor said, and then they went ahead and punished me for allowing his soundbite to reach people's eardrums. So
wait, you just asked the doctor some questions, and you got in trouble for what the person they wanted you to interview said?
A medical professional.
Yeah. So so this was 2 weeks after Dr. Stella Emanuel spoke in D.C. saying what she said about hydroxychloroquine, and then I was sent 2 weeks later to talk to a doctor who was treating COVID patients. He had actually teamed up with the Army medical team from the Department of Defense. They were all treating COVID patients, and the interview was very dull. The Army wouldn't tell me anything. I knew that the audience was still buzzing about hydroxychloroquine after all of that crazy news about Stella Emanuel, the mass censorship across social media that we saw after that. I think people had lost more trust than ever in media when they saw this strange blackout where every hydroxychloroquine post was being deleted.
Still.
Yep. Yeah. So
even we have to be careful, otherwise YouTube could take the whole show down.
Right. Yeah.
Creepy.
So sorry, I'm saying the H word. I hope your show survives.
No, I mean
me.
changed it. If it gets deleted, it does.
Yeah.
If YouTube pulls that and it's that creepy because we're talking about censorship in the media, yeah, I mean that's the level of insanity we're dealing with right now.
Yeah,
really?
and we're not telling people what to do. We're not medical professionals, so we want to clarify that.
Yeah.
And we're just talking about the facts of the story, which are very important.
Exactly.
You talked to a medical professional in the field,
Exactly.
dealing with real life situations, and could you expand on his kind of take? What was why did this happen?
This all that happened. Dull interview with the Army. They won't tell me a thing. I know people are buzzing about hydroxychloroquine, so I say final question of the whole interview. I say, by the way, do you guys use hydroxychloroquine? And then he said, actually, we have used it and we've had great success. I know it's very controversial, but we throw the whole kitchen sink at them. We treat them with a lot of. They have a whole recipe of treatments for COVID patients, and so I actually added that as the final soundbite in my TV package. And by the way, guys, the story I'm telling you, I literally just uploaded YouTube. If you check my social media, I uploaded my boss's own words on this, so you can go check what my boss has said about this after the show wraps up.
YouTube.com/Ivory Hecker, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, just search Ivory Hecker, I guess. I don't know if it's...
Sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess, yeah, maybe it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, if you go to my Instagram, real.ivory, I just uploaded it there.
Right on.
Anyway, so the bosses, I added that as the last soundbite of the package. Oh, by the way, he is using, this hospital is implementing the controversial drug. And I called it controversial. I just left it at that. And my minutes before air, my bosses were like, "Get rid of that soundbite. We do not want that in our newscast." And I was like, "Okay, well, why is that?" They said, "Well, you didn't include the context of other drugs they're using." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I got rid of it from the TV news. It didn't air in the TV news. I uploaded that soundbite to Facebook with the caption having all the drugs he uses to treat COVID. So his whole recipe is on there. And the bosses flipped out. They flipped out. They said that I was not following their instruction. I did exactly what they told me to do, right?
Wow.
So anyway, they went so far as to they actually shut down my social media. They said you're not allowed to post anything until we say so. And then so I was in like a week-long blackout. And then they said, okay, you can post on social media, but only things that we approve, which is safe news.
Wow.
And but then they instituted basically a permanent a permanent ban on coverage of COVID drug treatment. So I was no longer allowed to cover COVID drug treatments because I could not comprehend the narrative. the narrative wasn't going.
The president was talking about this.
Right.
It was
and
huge
here's
news.
the thing. I'm adding zero commentary, zero opinion to this. Just here's his soundbite. This is what he said.
Yeah, Yahoo News had a story about HCQ, and they had a story titled "Drug Endorsed by Trump No More Effective Than Placebo at Warding Off Coronavirus, Studies Suggest." A couple days ago, they had another article by Yahoo News. I'm not saying this. Yahoo News is saying this. Study shows hydroxychloroquine and zinc treatments increased coronavirus survival rate by almost 3 times. That's Yahoo News. That's not even.
But to be fair, I mean, it's a year apart.
Yeah.
So there were some studies that had been retracted, and I think
here's the fascinating thing though. That doctor I interviewed, he was adding the zinc with the hydroxychloroquine. Apparently, people are saying that it works more effectively if there's zinc mixed with it. I don't know.
And there was other previous studies without zinc. And that's why Dr. Chris Martinson of Peak Prosperity was talking about how there was a debunked study that was personally not adding up to the science that he questioned that came out about hydroxychloroquine.
So let's just say this right now. Yeah. Do not take any advice. Yeah. Like, you seriously got to go talk to a doctor. You do not get it from us. Just because there's some Yahoo stories that say one thing or another doesn't mean you should do anything. You should talk to a doctor and take your doctor's advice. I think the biggest thing, one of the things YouTube is concerned about, I'll say one of the things, is that you get these stories about this lady eating fish food or whatever, and they don't want to get smeared in the media having supported shows that have promoted or talked about it at all. So I want to be very clear. Our focus is on the media's response to this.
Exactly.
You go and talk to a doctor before you do anything.
So looking at the comparison of those two studies almost a year apart, it's more of a confirmation that we need to keep the conversation going out in the public. Stop shutting down conversation about this, because we could have maybe connected more dots on this a lot earlier.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will add that study that's come out is not peer reviewed. And it's a preliminary research study that is not to be used for guidelines according to its, like, the first paragraph in the study says, do not use this in clinical use. It is not peer reviewed. So I think this is one of the things that we have to be careful about. And for whatever reason, YouTube freaks out. Now, I will say the creepier aspect of it is you can't even ask a doctor, right?
It was a doctor who was doing. But here's one thing that just stopped me in my tracks. A couple of weeks ago, I was thinking back to that doctor and thinking over this crazy journey these past 10 months or whatever it's been. And I Googled him, and I came across something that said that his death rate was dramatically lower in his hospital than other hospitals. And I was like, what? And I looked into this further, and I actually made calls myself and collected raw data and came to find that he has dramatically lower death rates at his hospital compared to other hospitals across the county, the nation, and the world.
Yeah. This is a major story, and I think this is why YouTube has had the hammer on it so effectively, because there's a lot of implications here. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but people should do their own research, do their own homework. The medical studies are out there. You could read them yourselves. Some are debunked, but the conversations that are being had are having to be had outside of big social media companies, and that's sad.
Outside of corporate news outlets as well.
I will add, there is a really creepy, I don't know how to describe it, but there's the left. The establishment left has their creepy blue and on worldview where Rachel Maddow screams Russia for years and they all just believe it. And then you do have, QAnon people and people who just outright believe certain things. And this is the challenge. People going online and just reading whatever and assuming it's true. That's why I'm like, look, we've mentioned this before. I've had people say that they don't trust their own doctor, and I'm like, if you don't trust your own local doctor, who do you trust? What do you do? You know what I mean? What's your response? To go ask your neighbor Agatha or something? I'm sorry, I couldn't do that. I have to talk to a doctor, maybe get a second opinion.
You should have a relationship with them. You should get some of the scientific studies, send them to your medical professional, and have an honest, real discussion with them, because if you can't trust your doctor, you're at the wrong doctor. You should be having honest conversations.
But I got to stress this point. I turn on the TV every day, and you'll see some woman with blonde pigtails prancing through the fields, and it'll be like, she's happy because she takes Flabodon. Is Flabodon right for you? And I'm like, they just promote. They don't even tell me what the drug does.
Yep.
I remember seeing a commercial. I'm not going to name the drug. They'll come after me. These people are litigious. But it was like, I'll keep it vague. And it was asking if this drug is right for you. And I'm just like, you didn't even tell me what it does.
Yeah.
So it's like some old man's going to call and he's going to be like, I saw a commercial. Is it right for me? And they're like, sir, this is for pregnant women. Oh, the commercial didn't tell me that.
Yeah,
But these commercials that YouTube is probably taking ad money from.
Oh, TV news is definitely taking ad money from that. And any TV news viewer knows that. The commercial breaks are full of drug companies, okay? Mm-hmm. TV news is heavily funded by drug companies. And does that compromise the newscast when the coverage comes to drugs? I don't know. But here's the thing, guys. So when I found out those death rates at the hospital, it really, made me stop in my tracks and say, let me circle back to that story they banned me from last year. So that's what I've been digging on the past few weeks. I'm going to release an independent report on this in the coming days, unveiling, really digging deep into the banned information about what's really happening in these hospitals, what this guy's doing. And he's not just using one. He actually phased hydroxychloroquine out because he got too much pressure on him. Yeah. The pressure was intense. He was using a recipe of almost 10 different items that were really key. He says it's a very interesting story. I'm going to talk to quite a few people for this report, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
I know some medical doctors too that I could connect you with, and also another thing I wanted to add. I love hearing the side effects for those commercials. Yeah, when they like
explosive bowels.
Things. Yeah, and it's like what the hell?
That's a majority of the commercial space.
But I want to going back to like the corporate side of this. I guess what they were saying was that in this video that came out, that the video you got for Project Veritas, you had one higher up saying that about Bitcoin, that certain ethnic minorities wouldn't be interested in stories, so they don't report it. And so I'm wondering in this regard, if what is the reason why a corporate executive would say, don't tell this story? It sounds like the answer is they want to make money, right?
I really am not entirely sure what the motive was at the top. I think Fox at this time, and I'm talking Fox Corp, they feel such a target on their back for having the name Fox, and they are really you're really watching Fox start to crumble to that pressure. Is what's happening is they're starting to be so careful, and if they see other media censoring something out, they join that team and say we'll be safer.
That's spineless.
That. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what I found interesting in the video that you did, or that you released, was when the one woman says, she passed on a story about Bitcoin because the 5 p.m. hour is like largely, black people who wouldn't be interested in this story, things like that. And you mentioned that they were really like targeting demographics and trying to figure out which news would cater to them.
Yes,
could you explain that to us? Like what happened?
Oh yeah, it's in news. It's like everything's broken down into these little demographics, and actually, it's like a large amount of the behind the scenes conversation in news is about racial groups. Well, what's this racial group doing? What's that racial group doing? And how will this racial group respond to this news or whatever? And it's crazy. It's all through race-colored lenses, opposite of what MLK had in mind, by the way. But she just made an assumption that if you're poor and black, you don't care about Bitcoin.
Maybe it's because they haven't been told about Bitcoin, because these news outlets just say they wouldn't care anyway. They make an assumption about a person based on their race when they could be wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Maybe if you gave information to people and an opportunity to understand, they might actually care about it.
Right.
And if you look at one technology that has enriched people, has helped people, has taken people out of poverty and given them some wealth, what technology recently has allowed people to do that? Cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. They have helped so many developing countries, third world countries. There have been so many charity efforts. There have been so many amazing things happening in the Bitcoin cryptocurrency space that help people, that it's just kind of crazy to see someone's perception controlling the reporting on something that is so crucially important like Bitcoin.
It feels to me like there's, I guess it's a hive mind. It's the collective. I refer to
groupthink.
Yeah, right. So there is this major media hive. And if you step out of line, they all point at you in the same direction and they fire their figurative, lasers at you. All of a sudden now you're getting the heat from every single media outlet, every single activist organization, and then everyone gets scared it'll come for them, so they shut off working with you. You get canceled. I wonder if that's what we're seeing with, like you mentioned, the pressure at these news stations.
Yeah, Fox doesn't want to get canceled by being said to be touting a drug that is said to not work. So they're just gonna ban coverage of the drug to protect themselves.
I actually have experience with this. So when I worked for Fusion, which was the ABC News Univision joint venture, I was talking to the president of the company, and he told me, our job here is to side with the audience. That's what he called it. What it basically meant was we make news, content that caters to a group of people that is looking for that confirmation bias. I asked him, I was like, so are you saying to me that if there is a factual news story, but it would be offensive to our audience, we don't report it? And he said, I think that's fair, yes. That, I think, summarizes it.
That is the state of the American media, 100%.
And that happened to me almost 6 years ago.
This is your story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was basically trying to quit for the past 10 months, but I had this crazy rigid Fox contract.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened to me.
What's your
I had a 2-year contract with Fusion, and after about a year, I'll start from the beginning. So, I worked at Vice. I got contacted by this recruitment company. They said, here's what we want to do. We love what you've done with Vice News, because I was the founding member. I was the first person they hired and really shaped a lot of it. They said, we want you to do that exact same thing here with new technology, new methodology. And I was like, that's fantastic. Went and talked. They gave me some numbers. I said, this is fantastic. I'm going to have a budget. I'm going to have a team. I'm going to be making great money, and we're going to launch something really incredible. Within about 6 months or so, the company went from, we want to be edgy and youthful, to, we are completely woke in every way, and we outright hate white people. I'm not kidding. The editor-in-chief changed his Twitter banner to say, down with whiteness. And it was a black fist, like revolution fist. And so that to me was like, okay, I just go on the ground and I tell people what's happening. I'm not here to claim a race is bad or to push ideology. And so I started having these conversations where I'd just say like, hey, I'm not comfortable with the content shift. And eventually it became more golden handcuffs for me. They didn't want this kind of content anymore. They wanted activist, progressive. And this is how the conversation came about. One of the first was, I said, look, if was when I go to his office and I said, I see what's going on at this company. I don't agree with your ideology. It doesn't fit like my style of reporting. I just want to do on the ground, documentaries. I went to a weapons expo in Brazil. We looked at guns and missiles, and there were generals walking around and stuff. Nothing overtly ideological. And so when I come back and I see what they're doing with all the content, I'm like, this stuff is laughable. I mean, like, you're dumping hundreds of millions of dollars to make an activist blog. Like, people do this work for free. You don't need to start a newsroom to make an activist blog. Go start a nonprofit. Do you want to actually do news and want to make a successful company? This isn't going to work. That's where that conversation comes from, where he says, look, we're just here to side with the audience. And then I said, what audience is that? And he says, look, young people are progressive. This is the thing that they want. And I said, I don't think it's about what they want. I think it's about giving fair and honest information so that they can understand what's happening in the world. And then he said, look, we're here to just side with the audience. That's when I said, does that mean if there's a factual news story that would be offensive to them, we wouldn't report it? He said, yes, I think that's fair. I had a meeting with them I think this was in California, because we were based in Miami. And I sat down with them after about a year or so into the contract, and I said, if this is the way things are going to go, clearly I shouldn't be here. So how about we just end it now and you guys sever my contract? But they didn't want to do that. I think they were worried that I was one of their high-profile hires. They called it the Expendables. They hired a bunch of prominent personalities from across New York media. They were like, what would happen if the news comes out, Tim Pool breaks contract and quits? They didn't want to deal with the bad PR. So he was like, I see what you're saying. I'm really sorry. We'll figure it out. The president outright told me that the company was racist, like straight up said the company was racist. Wow. and it was, there were issues. And so he said, we'll talk about it later. Well, what ended up happening later was I got a phone call, and I thought this was it. I got an email. They're like, we need to have a conversation with you. And I was like, finally, it's been a few months. Now they're going to end my contract early and I can be rid of this company. No, I get a phone call thinking the guy's going to say, we've, considered what you've talked about and we're going to let you go. Instead, he said, I just wanted to let you know, we have a very serious matter to discuss with you. And I think I'd rather just tell you in person. And I was like, wonderful. And he goes, yes, we're going to be depositing a very large bonus. It should be around $40,000 into your bank account. And we don't want you to be alarmed by the number. And I went, what? yeah, everyone's getting a bonus. And I started laughing. And I was like, is this a joke? I don't even know why I got a bonus. I was not part of whatever the structure is they were trying to build. And then I look at my bank account, I'm like, okay. And then I just waited, I suppose, and had more and more of the same conversations. They didn't want this kind of coverage anymore. I can understand it. When they wanted to start the company, they wanted to make Vice. After they changed their course, they realized they had me under a contract and they didn't want to look bad. So then come August of 2016, the same thing happens. We should call. And I'm like, here it is. My contract is up. Thank you for everything you've done for the company. At this time, we will not be renewing your contract. And I said, thank you and have a nice day. And that was it. That was done. And that's when I started my own YouTube thing. That's corruption.
Yeah.
Their goal was not to provide information to people to help them better their lives. Their explicit goal, their expressed goal was to give confirmation bias to people. Now, I know the left will look at my content and say, Tim, you rag on Democrats all day and night, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, I personally, as a pundit and commentator, I have my biases. I rag on the Republicans in a different way and not nearly as much as I do the Democrats. But we're going to do something very, very different with our newsroom. We're going to get an independent fact checker, 2 or 3, and they're going to be in a different office outside of our newsroom fact checking the articles we write because we're going to do it properly. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.